Welcome to solving two-step equations the easy way. All right, so in a traditional math course, you're probably taught to solve this two-step equation like this. Multiply both sides by 4, cancel out the 4's, carry everything else down, divide by -3, and get your final answer of -8. Oh yeah, cancel again. So there's nothing wrong with this method other than that most students have no idea what they're doing. Teachers tell students to solve equations this way because it's an algorithmic process. You follow steps, and if you follow the steps correctly every time, you will always get the right answer. Unfortunately, students have no concept of what they're actually doing. So, if you want to actually understand math and be better at it, you need to comprehend what you're doing. And the best way to do that is to use visuals. I've explained in my previous video, solving one-step equations, that it's beneficial to think of x as a box containing objects. And so 3x would be 3 boxes containing objects. Now we don't know how many objects are in each box, but we know they're all the same objects and each box has the same amount. When we start using real life examples with negatives, it becomes more difficult. What does it mean to have negative objects in a box? Generally, when we use negatives, we're referring to money or some kind of real life distance or weight or number application, and not necessarily an object. But for the sake of simplicity, we're going to think of these boxes as being full of negatives, negative objects. Okay, and the way we're going to illustrate this example is -3x represents 3 boxes of negative objects divided amongst 4 people is the best way to think about this. Now, imagine I take all the objects in the boxes and I dump them out on the floor. And then 4 people come around and they pick up all the objects so that each person has an equal amount. Okay, we don't know how many objects were in all these boxes, but we know that they were evenly split amongst 4 people so that each person had 6 of the objects. Okay, so now we have a visual of what's going on. Each person has 6 of these negatives. Okay, why is this helpful? Well, now we know that these 4 people have 6 objects each. That means there are 24 negative objects in total. So what we want to do is reverse the process and go backwards. We want these 4 people to put stuff back, in essence. So if we have -24 objects in total and we had to put them all back into the boxes equally, that means each box would have -8 objects. See how that works? So each box had -8 objects to start with. We dumped them all out to get -24 objects split amongst 4 people equally so that each person had 6 of the objects. Okay, now we have a better understanding of what we were actually doing when the teacher said multiply both sides by 4. Another way to solve the exact same problem is to do a looping method. Now looping is a great way, looping is a great way to to solve the problem without needing to draw pictures. You still draw a diagram, but it's not, you don't have to use boxes and objects and all that kind of stuff. So looping, you also saw in my previous video on solving one-step equations. So go back and watch that if you did not get a chance to watch that. So here we have a box of objects once again, but now instead of using 3 objects, we're not going to, for this looping method, you don't have to even worry about that. So say you start with 1 box. We know that if we take just 1 box and we multiply it by -3, so times -3, we know that we get a value of some sort. We don't know what that value is, but we get some value. And then we divide that value by 4, and we get 6. Okay? So all I did was I took the box, here is the box is x, and multiplied it by -3 to get a value which we don't know. We divided it by 4 to get 6. So all we have to do is reverse the process. So we're going to take our 6 and we're going to multiply by 4 now, because we're just reversing the process. We get 24. And then we have to do the opposite of times -3, which is divide -3 to get -8. What's cool about the looping method is that it naturally flows so that you can check your answer. If the loop is done correctly, now we take what's in the box, -8, we multiply it by -3 to get 24, we divide it by 4 to get 6, and the whole loop should work. No matter where you start at any point in the loop, you can follow the circle around and it'll always make sense. So let's say I start at 24, I divide by -3, I get -8, times -3, you get positive 24, divide by 4, you get 6, times 4, you get 24, you get back to where you started. It's a great visual, and it's a great visual way to understand what you're doing when your teacher says, well, multiply both sides by 4. Okay, the reason you're doing that is because you're reversing the process. You're looping. You're undoing all these operations. It's just a lot messier when you do it this way. This actually makes sense. Kids will understand this better. So if you always struggled solving two-step equations, consider using the looping method from now on. All right, let's try another example. Let's say the equation is 3x minus 4 equals, let's say, 11. Okay, and now I want you to pause the video and try the looping method. Unpause it when you're done. Okay, so hopefully you did the looping method. Let's try this. So the box is always x. And you don't really have to draw. If you're just drawing this on a piece of paper, you can just use a square for the box. You don't really have to have an actual box picture. So that's x. So now, once again, we're doing times 3 to get a value. Now, this value, we don't know what it is, but we know that when we subtract 4 from it, we get 11. Okay? So now we have to reverse the process. We're going to, instead of subtract 4, we're going to do plus 4. And that gives us 15. And then one last operation. We're going to, instead of times 3, we're going to divide 3. And we get 5. Okay, let's check our answer. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 minus 4 is 11. 11 plus 4 is 15. 15 divided by 3 is 5. The loop works. Okay? And you'll notice if you do this right, what's cool about the looping method, these two numbers should always match. 15 and 15, and then just like in the last example, we had 24 and 24. So that's another way you can check that it works. Thank you for watching. I hope one of these ways of solving two-step equations helps you in the future. Thanks for watching, and like this video if you learned something.